I was forced to swap grooms with my sister. I wed a farmer who's the alpha king and he endlessly loved me. My name is Stephanie Walker, and I was forced to marry a stranger on what was supposed to be my wedding day. Not metaphorically. Not in some romantic comedy mix-up. Literally forced. My sister Victoria didn't just steal my fiancé. She orchestrated an entire conspiracy with our mother, the wedding planner, and half the church congregation to make sure that when I walked down that aisle in my grandmother's lace dress, I wouldn't be marrying Daniel Richardson, the man I'd loved for 3 years. I'd be marrying Steve. A farmer. A man I'd never met. A man my mother called beneath us when he was originally arranged to marry Victoria. A man my sister described as useful but unimpressive when she was plotting to trade him for my successful businessman fiancé. Here's what none of them knew. Steve wasn't just a farmer working a small homestead in the countryside. He was the alpha king of the Silver Moon Pack. The most powerful werewolf in the Western Hemisphere. A leader commanding 12 territories and over 8,000 wolves. And he'd been waiting 300 years for his true mate. My name is Stephanie Walker. I'm 26 years old. I was raised to believe I was completely human, completely ordinary, completely powerless. This is the story of how my family sold me to save face. How I married a poor farmer to avoid scandal. And how I discovered I was never human at all. I was the last descendant of the moon-blessed bloodline, the only woman alive who could stand beside an alpha king as his equal. This is also the story of how my sister Victoria spent years manipulating everyone around her to climb the social ladder, only to discover that what she rejected was priceless, and what she stole was worthless. This is the story of how sometimes the worst thing that ever happens to you is actually destiny fighting like hell to put you exactly where you belong. Let me take you back to 3 days before my wedding. To the moment I overheard my mother and sister planning my destruction in our family kitchen. To the day I learned that love, real love, doesn't announce itself with diamonds and promises. Sometimes it arrives in work boots and flannel, with soil under its fingernails and forever in its eyes. So here's what I need you to understand. Stephanie didn't ask to be betrayed by the people who should have protected her most. She didn't ask to have her wedding stolen, her fiancé manipulated, her worth questioned by her own mother. But she survived it. She rose from it. She became a queen from the ashes of that humiliation. And I'm asking you for something much simpler than what she endured. I'm asking you to hit that subscribe button right now. Because here's the truth, if you're still listening to this story, if you're feeling that anger on Stephanie's behalf, if you're curious about how a woman goes from discarded bride to alpha queen, then you're exactly the kind of person who deserves to be part of this community. We're not just telling stories here. We're building something, a space where the underestimated, the overlooked, the ones everyone counted out get to watch themselves win. Every subscription tells me that these stories matter. That Stephanie's journey from doormat to destroyer matters. You wouldn't walk away from Stephanie at her lowest moment, would you? Then don't walk away from this channel at its beginning. Subscribe. Turn on notifications. Help us reach 1,000 subscribers so we can keep bringing you stories about women who refuse to stay broken. One click. That's all it takes. Do it for every woman who was told she wasn't enough. Do it for Stephanie. Do it now. I should have known Tuesday would change everything. Not because of any premonition, though those would come later. But because it was unseasonably warm for October in Toronto, and my grandmother always said warm days in fall were warnings, nature's way of saying something unnatural was coming. I'd left my final dress fitting early because Auntie Rose, the seamstress, had finished ahead of schedule. My grandmother's lace dress, the one she wore when she married my grandfather in Port of Spain 60 years ago, fit perfectly now. The alterations were complete. I was getting married in 3 days to Daniel Richardson, and for the first time in my 26 years, I felt like everything was finally coming together. My job at the Immigrant Services Center was fulfilling. My relationship with Daniel was stable. My father's health had improved. Even my mother seemed pleased with me, which was rarer than snow in Trinidad. I took the bus home instead of calling Daniel for a ride. I wanted to walk through our neighborhood, to feel the community I'd grown up in, to savor these last few days as Stephanie Walker before I became Stephanie Richardson. Our house was a modest two-story in Scarborough, nothing fancy, but my father had maintained it lovingly for 30 years. The garden was his pride, roses, hibiscus, and a small vegetable patch he'd cultivated since retiring from the mechanic shop. I came in through the back door, as I always did, planning to help my mother with dinner preparations. And that's when I heard them. My mother's voice came from the kitchen, low and conspiratorial. And Victoria's, my sister's, responding with barely contained excitement. I froze in the mudroom, hand still on the doorknob. So Daniel agrees? He'll go through with it? Victoria asked. My heart stopped. Go through with what? He does, my mother replied, her tone matter of fact, as if discussing grocery lists. He prefers you anyway, says you're more sophisticated. And Stephanie, well, Stephanie will adapt. She always does. The world tilted. I gripped the doorframe to steady myself. Victoria laughed. Actually laughed. And the farmer? This Stephen person? He's expecting to marry you on Saturday, my mother said. We'll simply substitute Stephanie. He's never met either of you in person. The arrangement was made through intermediaries for his privacy. He won't know the difference until it's too late. Poor Stephanie, Victoria said, but she didn't sound sympathetic. She sounded satisfied. From a businessman to a farmer. But honestly, mother, it suits her better. She's too simple for Daniel's world anyway. I should have walked in. Should have screamed. Should have thrown something. Instead, I stood there, silent, as I'd been taught my whole life. Good Caribbean girls don't make scenes. Don't raise their voices. Don't question their elders. I stood there and listened as my mother and sister dismantled my entire life. Tell me again how this works, Victoria said, and I heard papers rustling, my wedding plans, I realized. They were literally rewriting my wedding. My mother sighed with satisfaction. The Stephen arrangement came through the Callaway firm, you remember, those lawyers who handle unusual estates? Apparently, this Steve owns significant property in the countryside, several hundred acres. Very private man. Very particular. The arrangement was that he wanted a wife from a respectable family, someone who could adapt to rural life. And you offered me, Victoria said. Initially, yes. But then you met Daniel at Stephanie's work function, and, well, opportunities shifted. I remembered that function. 6 months ago. I'd introduced Victoria to my fiancé, proud to show off my successful businessman partner. I'd watched them talk for 20 minutes about investment strategies and downtown real estate while I refilled drinks. I'd thought nothing of it. I'd been so stupid. Daniel's family expects a wife with presence, my mother continued. Someone who can host his business associates, navigate his social circles. Victoria, you're perfect for that. You've always been the ambitious one. Stephanie is kinder. More suited to a simpler life. Kinder. She made kindness sound like a defect. And Daddy doesn't know? Victoria asked. Your father's heart can't take stress. We'll tell him there was a last-minute change for compatibility reasons. He'll accept it, he always does. And Stephanie will accept it too because that's who she is. She sacrifices. She adapts. She keeps peace. They had me completely figured out. What about Stephanie's dress? The venue? Everything has her name on it, Victoria pointed out. The venue can accommodate the change. We'll say there were 2 ceremonies, a small private one for Stephanie and Stephen, and the main event for you and Daniel. Anyone who questions it will be told it's a cultural tradition. You know how people are, they'll accept anything if you call it Caribbean custom. I felt sick. Actually sick. I backed out of the mudroom silently, years of practice making my exit soundless. I made it to the sidewalk before my legs gave out. I sat on the curb in front of my childhood home and stared at nothing. 3 days. I had 3 days until my wedding. My wedding. Not my wedding. Victoria's wedding to my fiancé, wearing a different dress, at the venue my father had saved for 2 years to afford. And me? I would be married off to some stranger. Some farmer named Steve who lived in isolation and needed a wife who could adapt to rural life. I pulled out my phone. Called Daniel. He answered on the 3rd ring. Hey, babe. What's up? Are you sleeping with my sister? I asked. No preamble. No politeness. Silence. Then, Stephanie, I can explain. Are you? Not yet, he said, and the honesty was somehow worse than a lie. But Victoria and I, we make sense. You have to see that. She's ambitious. She understands my world. And you, Stephanie, you're wonderful, but you're too soft for what I need. Too focused on helping people instead of building something. I'm focused on helping people because I'm a social worker, I said. My voice sounded hollow. That's my job. That you claimed to admire. I do admire it, Daniel said. For someone. Just not for my wife. Victoria wants what I want, a success, status, influence. You want. I don't even know what you want, Stephanie. You're always worried about everyone else. I wanted you, I whispered. And that's sweet. But sweetness doesn't build empires. He hung up. I sat on that curb until the sun set. Until my father came home from his evening walk and found me there. Stephanie? Baby girl, what's wrong? My father, Winston Walker, the strongest man I knew despite his weak heart, knelt beside me on the sidewalk with difficulty. His knees cracked. His breathing was labored. The heart attack last year had aged him a decade. I looked at him and thought, if I tell him, if I expose what Mother and Victoria are planning, the stress will kill him. His doctor was explicit. No stress. No conflict. No emotional upheaval. Nothing, Daddy, I said. Just wedding nerves. He smiled, relief obvious. Your mother told me Daniel and Victoria have gotten close. Planning some business venture together to surprise you after the honeymoon. Isn't that nice? Your sister, supporting your marriage? They'd already started rewriting the narrative for him. Very nice, I managed. And this Stephen fellow, your mother mentioned he's Victoria's backup plan if her New York opportunity falls through? Smart, having options. Though I hope your sister finds what you found, baby girl. That kind of love, what you and Daniel have, that's rare. I closed my eyes. They'd even prepared my father's version of reality. One where the swap would seem natural, expected, just family helping family. Daddy, if I needed to do something difficult to protect you, would you want me to? He cupped my face in his rough mechanic's hands. Stephanie Louise Walker, you don't protect me. I protect you. That's how this works. But his hands shook. His breathing was still labored. And I knew that if I started a war with Mother and Victoria now, 3 days before the wedding, with deposits paid and guests arriving, my father would be caught in the middle. And it would kill him. I love you, Daddy, I said. I love you too, baby girl. Now come inside. Your mother made your favorite, stew chicken and rice. I followed him inside. Sat at the dinner table. Watched Victoria and my mother smile at me like nothing was wrong. And I said nothing. That night, I lay in my childhood bed and stared at my wedding dress hanging on the closet door. Grandmother's lace. 60 years of history. A dress that was supposed to carry me into my future. I didn't cry. Couldn't cry. I was beyond tears. Instead, I felt something else. Something I'd never felt before. Rage. Cold. Pure. Absolute rage. And underneath it, something stranger. A warmth in my chest. A pull toward something I couldn't name. A whisper in my blood that said, wait. Trust. This isn't the end. I didn't know what it meant. I wouldn't understand until I stood at that altar and took the hand of the man who was supposed to be my sister's husband. I wouldn't understand until I looked into Steve's eyes and felt the world shift. But that night, something inside me began to wake up. I woke up on my wedding day feeling nothing. Not excitement. Not nervousness. Not even the rage from 3 nights ago. Just a hollow emptiness where my future used to be. Victoria was already awake, singing in the shower. Actually singing. Some pop song about getting everything she ever wanted. My mother knocked once and entered without waiting for permission. She held a garment bag, not my grandmother's lace dress, I noticed immediately. Good morning, darling, she said, her tone artificially bright. We need to talk about today. Do we? I asked, still lying in bed. She sat on the edge of my mattress, and for a moment, I saw something flicker across her face. Guilt, maybe. Or just discomfort at having to say the quiet part out loud. Stephanie, you're a smart girl. I think you understand that sometimes life requires us to be flexible. Flexible, I repeated. Daniel and Victoria have developed feelings for each other. Real feelings. And this arrangement with Steven, it's actually quite advantageous for you. He's very wealthy, owns significant property, and he specifically requested a wife who was kind and adaptable. That's you, sweetheart. That's always been you. I sat up slowly. Does Daddy know? Your father knows there have been some adjustments for everyone's happiness. He's proud of you for being so mature about this. So they'd lied to him. Framed it as my choice, my sacrifice, my maturity. And if I say no? I asked. If I walk downstairs right now and tell Daddy the truth? My mother's face hardened. Then you'll give your father another heart attack. Is that what you want? To kill him 3 days after his cardiologist said he was finally stable? There it was. The trap, stated plainly. The dress? I asked, nodding to the garment bag. Something simple. Appropriate for a countryside ceremony. Your grandmother's dress will look beautiful on Victoria for the main event. Of course it would. Stephanie, my mother said, and her voice actually softened. I know this isn't what you planned. But sometimes the universe has better plans than we do. Steven is a good man. You'll have a peaceful life. Isn't that worth something? I looked at her, really looked at her. Catherine Walker, née Catherine Boudram, daughter of a prominent Trinidadian family who'd lost everything in bad investments. She'd spent 30 years clawing for respectability, for status, for the life she felt she deserved. And she was willing to sacrifice me to get it. Fine, I said. I'll do it. Her relief was visible. Oh, sweetheart, you're doing the right thing. You'll see. In a year, you'll thank me. She left the garment bag and walked out. I unzipped it slowly. Inside was a simple cream-colored dress, pretty but plain, nothing like my grandmother's lace masterpiece. Nothing like what a bride should wear. Victoria appeared in my doorway, already in her robe, makeup half done. Stephanie, she said, and for a second, she almost sounded uncertain. I want you to know. Daniel and I didn't plan this. Yes, you did, I said calmly. You planned it at that work function 6 months ago. Maybe earlier. She shifted uncomfortably. He makes me feel alive. Like I can be more than just this. She gestured at our small room, our modest house. Don't you want me to be happy? Did you ever want me to be happy? I asked. She didn't answer. Just turned and left. I dressed mechanically. The cream dress fit well enough. I did my own makeup, simple, natural, nothing dramatic. I wore my grandmother's pearl earrings, the ones she'd given me when I turned 16. For your wedding day, child, she'd said. To remember that you come from strong women. I wondered what grandmother would think of this. Actually, I knew. She'd be ashamed of me for not fighting. But grandmother was dead, and daddy's heart was weak, and I was alone. The church was beautiful. My father had worked extra jobs for 2 years to afford St. Augustine's for my wedding. Only it wasn't my wedding anymore. When I arrived with my father, who still thought this was somehow my choice, I saw the setup immediately. The main sanctuary was decorated for Victoria and Daniel's ceremony, scheduled for 2 p.m. White roses everywhere. Elegant. Expensive. My ceremony was in the small chapel. 20 guests, mostly Stephen's associates who I'd never met. My father. A few confused relatives who'd been told about the change in plans. No one from my side who would question this. Mother had made sure of that. Stephen was already at the altar when we entered. And I really saw him, for the first time. The photographs his lawyers had provided didn't do him justice. He was tall, easily 6'4", with broad shoulders and the build of someone who did physical labor. His suit was simple but well-made, dark gray, no tie. His hair was dark brown with hints of silver at the temples, a bit long, brushing his collar. His face was rugged, strong jaw, straight nose, and eyes. His eyes were the color of storm clouds. Gray-blue and intense. They fixed on me the moment I entered, and I felt something shift in the air. Like the room had taken a breath. My father walked me down the aisle, squeezing my arm. He's a good man, baby girl, he whispered. I checked him out myself. Owns over 500 acres, employs dozens of people, spotless reputation. You'll be safe with him. Safe. Not loved. Not cherished. Safe. We reached the altar. My father placed my hand in Stephen's and stepped back. Stephen's hand was warm, calloused, strong. The moment our skin touched, I felt it, an electric shock that ran from my fingertips straight to my chest. My breath caught. His eyes widened fractionally. He felt it too. Stephanie, he said, his voice low and rough, with an accent I couldn't place. That's your name? I nodded, confused. You didn't know? I knew I was marrying a Walker daughter, he said quietly, so only I could hear. I wasn't told which one. Oh God. He knew. He knew this was a swap. I'm sorry, I whispered. I know you were supposed to get Victoria. She's more. Don't, he interrupted, his grip on my hand tightening slightly. Don't apologize for existing, Stephanie Walker. Not to me. Not to anyone. I stared at him, shocked. The pastor cleared his throat. Shall we begin? The ceremony was a blur. I repeated words I didn't feel. Promised things I didn't understand. Stephen's responses were firm, clear, like he meant every word even though he'd just met me. When the pastor said, "You may kiss your bride," Stephen hesitated. Then he leaned down, he had to lean down quite far, and pressed a gentle kiss to my forehead instead of my lips. Not like this, he murmured against my skin. Not when you're in pain. Something inside me cracked. There was no reception for us. Just a quiet room in the back of the church where Stephen signed papers with his lawyer, a severe-looking woman named Patricia who barely acknowledged me. All the financial arrangements are handled, Patricia said to Stephen, handing him a folder. The property transfers, the accounts, everything as you specified. Mrs. Steve's name has been added to all relevant documents. Mrs. Steve. That was me now. Thank you, Patricia, Stephen said. You can go. I'll handle things from here. She left, and we were alone. You don't have to do this, Stephen said, turning to me. I can have the marriage annulled. Quietly. No one needs to know. You can walk away right now. I looked toward the sanctuary, where I could hear music starting. Victoria's ceremony. The real ceremony. The one everyone actually cared about. Walk away to what? I asked. I have nothing left here. You have yourself, Stephen said. That's not nothing. I almost laughed. You don't know me. How would you know what I have? He studied me with those storm gray eyes. I know you were willing to marry a stranger to protect your father. I know you're standing here in a dress that isn't yours, at a ceremony that was stolen from you, and you haven't complained once. I know you're stronger than anyone in that sanctuary realizes. I'm not strong, I said bitterly. Strong people fight. I just gave up. No, Stephen said firmly. You chose the harder path. There's a difference. Before I could respond, my mother swept in, Victoria trailing behind her in her pre-ceremony robe. Stephanie, you need to leave now, Mother said briskly. The main ceremony starts in 20 minutes, and we can't have confusion. Confusion, I repeated numbly. Victoria wouldn't meet my eyes. She clutched her bouquet, roses and peonies, the exact arrangement I'd chosen, and shifted uncomfortably. Stephen, your vehicle is out back, Mother continued, addressing my husband as if I weren't there. The driver knows the way to your property. We'll send Stephanie's belongings next week. Her belongings will come tonight, Stephen said, his voice cold in a way that made my mother pause. All of them. Everything she owns. Delivered by 9 p.m. or I'm coming back for them myself. Are we clear? My mother's eyes narrowed. Of course. Whatever you prefer. Not what I prefer, Stephen said. What's right? Stephanie is my wife. She deserves to have her possessions. Tonight. He offered me his arm. Ready? I took it, grateful for something solid to hold on to. We walked past Victoria without speaking. I heard her whisper, Stephanie, but I didn't stop. My father was waiting by the back door. He hugged me tight, and I smelled his familiar scent, motor oil and Old Spice and home. You call me if you need anything, he said. Anything at all. You understand? I will, Daddy. I'm proud of you, baby girl. So proud. I almost broke then. Almost told him everything. But his hands were shaking, and his breathing was shallow, and I couldn't do it. I love you, I said instead. Stephen helped me into a pickup truck, clean but clearly well used. Not the vehicle I'd expected somehow. As we pulled away, I looked back once. Saw guests arriving for the real wedding. Saw my family's house where I'd grown up. Saw my entire old life disappearing behind us. You okay? Stephen asked. No, I said honestly. But I will be. He nodded like that was acceptable. Good. I don't trust people who pretend to be okay when they're not. We drove in silence for a while, leaving the city behind, heading north into farmland I'd never explored. We'd been driving for almost an hour before Stephen spoke again. I need to explain some things before we get to the property, he said, eyes on the road. Things that will seem strange. Stranger than a forced marriage? I asked. The corner of his mouth twitched. Almost a smile. Yeah. Stranger than that. He took a breath. The people who work for me, they're loyal. Extremely loyal. They might seem intense. Protective. Don't be alarmed. Okay, I said slowly. And the property is bigger than you might expect. The house itself is modest, but there's a lot of land. A lot of activity. People coming and going at odd hours. Are you in some kind of illegal business? I asked bluntly. Because I need to know now. He actually laughed at that. A real laugh, warm and surprised. No. Nothing illegal. Just unusual. Private. That's not very reassuring. I know, he said. I'm sorry. I'm not good at this, at explaining. I'm used to people who already understand. I studied his profile as he drove. Strong features. Tired eyes. Hands that gripped the wheel like he was used to holding on to things tightly. Can I ask you something? I said. Anything. Why did you agree to an arranged marriage? You don't seem like the type. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, I've been alone for a long time. Too long. I thought maybe structure would help. An arrangement without expectations. Someone who needed what I could provide, security, stability. Someone I could protect. That's it? Protection? Protection matters, he said quietly. It's not romantic, but it's real. I thought I'd given up on more than that. What changed? He glanced at me, and there was something in his eyes, something deep and old and impossibly sad. You touched my hand at the altar. I remembered the electric shock. The sense of recognition. What was that? I whispered. Something impossible, Stephen said. Something I stopped believing in 300 years ago. I laughed nervously. 300 years? Okay, now you're messing with me. He didn't smile. I wish I was. The truck turned off the main road onto a long driveway. Trees closed in on both sides, massive old oaks and maples that blocked out the setting sun. Stephen, you're scaring me a little. I know. I'm sorry. I'll explain everything tonight. I promise. But Stephanie? He looked at me seriously. Whatever you see, whatever happens, know this, I will never hurt you. And I will never let anyone else hurt you either. That's not negotiable. Why? I asked. You don't know me. Yes, he said softly. I do. The driveway opened into a clearing, and I saw the house. It was not what I expected. Mother had described it as a farmhouse. That was technically accurate but wildly misleading. This was a farmhouse the way a wolf was a dog. Technically true but missing the entire point. The main structure was 2 stories, built from stone and timber that looked centuries old. Additions had been added over time, I could see the different architectural styles, but everything fit together in a way that felt organic, grown rather than built. Around it were other buildings, barns, cabins, what looked like workshops. And people. Dozens of people moving around, working, talking, living. You said a farm, I said faintly. It is a farm, Stephen replied. Among other things. He parked near the main house. Immediately, people started approaching, men and women of all ages, all watching me with intense curiosity. An older man with gray hair and a scarred face reached us first. Alpha, he said, nodding respectfully to Stephen. Then his eyes moved to me. This is her? Her name is Stephanie, Stephen said firmly. My wife. She's to be treated with the same respect you show me. Understood? Understood, Alpha. Alpha. That was the second time someone had called him that. More people gathered. A woman with kind eyes and silver-streaked hair pushed through the crowd. Oh, let her breathe, you vultures. The poor girl just got married. Give her space. She smiled at me. I'm Margaret. I manage the house and most of the chaos around here. You must be exhausted. I'm confused, I admitted. That's fair, Margaret said. Come on. Let's get you settled. Everything else can wait. Stephen touched my arm gently. Go with Margaret. I need to handle some things, but I'll check on you in an hour. Okay? I nodded, following Margaret into the house. The interior was stunning, all natural wood and stone, massive fireplaces, furniture that looked handmade and comfortable. Artwork on the walls. Books everywhere. This is beautiful, I said. Stephen has good taste when he bothers to use it, Margaret said. Mostly he just works himself to death and forgets to enjoy anything. Maybe you'll change that. She led me upstairs to a large bedroom with windows overlooking the forest. This is the primary suite. Your things should arrive within the hour, Stephen made sure of it. Bathrooms through there. If you need anything, just call down. Someone's always around. Margaret, I said hesitantly. What is this place? Really? She studied me carefully. It's home. For a lot of people who didn't have one before. Stephen built that. Built something safe. Why does everyone call him Alpha? Margaret smiled. Let him explain that. It's his story to tell. But Stephanie? Don't be afraid. Whatever you learn tonight, remember, Stephen would die before he let anything harm you. That's not exaggeration. That's fact. She left me alone. I sat on the bed, massive, comfortable, covered in soft blankets, and tried to process everything. My wedding day. The worst day of my life. And somehow, I'd ended up here, in this strange beautiful place, married to a man I didn't understand, surrounded by people who looked at me like I was important. I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt that warmth in my chest again. That pull. That whisper that said, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. A knock on the door. Stephanie? Your things are here. I opened it to find 3 young men holding my boxes and bags, everything from my room at home. Where should we put them, ma'am? One asked politely. Ma'am. No one had ever called me ma'am before. Just anywhere is fine. Thank you. They arranged everything carefully and left. I went through the boxes mechanically, unpacking clothes, books, photos. My whole life, reduced to 8 cardboard boxes. At the bottom of the last one, I found my grandmother's journal. The one she'd kept in her last years, written in a mix of English and Trinidadian Creole. I'd never been able to fully understand it. I opened it randomly and read. The old blood runs true, even when we try to bury it. Stephanie has the sight, same as me. Same as my grandmother before me. But Catherine won't let me teach her. Says it's superstition, old island foolishness. She doesn't understand that some bloodlines carry more than DNA. They carry destiny. My hands shook. My grandmother had written about me? About sight? About blood? Another knock. Stephen's voice. Stephanie? Can I come in? I opened the door. He'd changed from his suit into jeans and a flannel shirt, looking more like the farmer everyone thought he was. We need to talk, he said gently. And I need to show you something. Okay, I said, voice small. He led me back downstairs, out through the back door, into the forest. The sun had set completely now. The moon was rising, full and impossibly bright. We walked in silence until we reached a clearing. What I'm about to tell you will sound impossible, Stephen said. But I need you to listen with an open mind. Can you do that? I'll try. He took a deep breath. My name is Steve, but that's not the name I was born with. I've had dozens of names over the centuries. I'm 347 years old. And I'm not human. I should have laughed. Should have backed away. Instead, I heard myself say, what are you? A werewolf, Stephen said simply. The Alpha King of the Silver Moon Pack. Leader of 12 territories and over 8,000 wolves across North America. And you, Stephanie Walker, are my true mate. The world tilted. And before I could respond, before I could process, Stephen's body began to change. It wasn't like the movies, painful and grotesque. It was fluid, natural, beautiful in a terrifying way. Bones shifted. Muscles transformed. Skin became fur. Where Stephen had stood, a massive wolf now sat. Silver-gray fur, exactly the color of his eyes. Enormous, the size of a small horse. Powerful beyond anything natural. The wolf, Stephen, looked at me with those same storm-gray eyes. And that warmth in my chest exploded into flame. I should have screamed. Should have run. Instead, I took a step forward. "Stephen?" I whispered. The wolf lowered his head, and I understood the gesture. Permission. Invitation. I reached out with a shaking hand and touched his fur. The moment my fingers made contact, power flooded through me, ancient, wild, absolutely right. The wolf, my husband, pressed into my touch with something like relief. And in my mind, clear as spoken words, I heard, "Finally. After so long. Finally, I found you." I collapsed to my knees, and Stephen shifted back, catching me before I hit the ground. "What's happening to me?" I gasped. "You're waking up," Stephen said, holding me steady. "The moon-blessed bloodline has been dormant in your family for generations. But it recognized its mate. It recognized me. And now it's coming back." Moon-blessed? The original humans who bonded with werewolves thousands of years ago. They had gifts: his power, healing, the ability to command lesser wolves. Your grandmother was one. She ran from this world, hid her gifts, married a human. But the blood doesn't forget, Stephanie. It was always there. Waiting for the right trigger. "You," I whispered. "You're the trigger." "Yes." I looked up at him, this impossible man, this ancient king, this stranger who somehow felt like home. "This is insane," I said. "Completely," Stephen agreed. "My family sold me to save face. They thought they were getting rid of a burden. And instead they gave you to a king." I laughed. Actually laughed. It was hysterical, inappropriate, perfect. "They're going to be so pissed when they find out," I said. Stephen smiled, a real smile this time, warm and almost boyish. "I'm looking forward to it." He helped me to my feet. "Come on. Let's get you inside. You need rest. Tomorrow, I'll start teaching you about your gifts. About this world. About us." "Us," I repeated. "We're really mates?" "Yes," Stephen said. "If you want to be. The bond only completes if both parties accept it. You have a choice, Stephanie. Always." I looked back at the house, the strange beautiful home full of impossible people. Then at the forest, wild and ancient. Then at Stephen, patient and powerful and waiting. "What happens if I say yes?" I asked. "Everything changes," Stephen said honestly. "You become the Alpha Queen. You'll have power, responsibility, danger. Enemies will target you. Politics will consume you. Nothing will ever be simple again. And if I say no? I'll help you build whatever life you want. Human. Normal. Safe. You'll lose the gifts, the bond, but you'll be free." I thought about my old life. My family who saw me as disposable. My fiancé who called me too soft. My sister who took everything without remorse. I thought about the warmth in my chest. The rightness of Stephen's hand in mine. The wolf's voice in my head saying finally. "I'm so tired of being safe," I whispered. "Safety just means I'm small enough not to bother anyone." Stephen's eyes blazed. "You were never meant to be small, Stephanie. You were meant to be extraordinary." "Then yes," I said. "Teach me. Show me who I really am. Let me be extraordinary." He pulled me close, and this time when he kissed me, it wasn't gentle. It was claiming. Promising. Sealing a bond that had waited centuries to complete. And in the forest around us, wolves howled, a sound of celebration, of welcome, of recognition. The unwanted bride. The discarded sister. The too soft, too simple girl nobody valued. She was dead. Long live the Alpha Queen. Emotional tone. Transforms from devastation to wonder. Stephanie moves from being a victim of her circumstances to discovering she's part of something ancient and powerful. The chapter ends not with resolution but with possibility. Everything is about to begin. I fell asleep that night in Stephen's arms, in a house full of werewolves, with power beginning to wake up in my blood. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't dream of losing Daniel. I dreamed of hunting. Here's what I need you to understand before we go any further. Stephanie walked into that church thinking she was losing everything. Her fiancé. Her future. Her dignity. She thought her family's betrayal was the end of her story. Instead, it was the beginning of her true one. She didn't know that the poor farmer she was being forced to marry was actually a 300-year-old Alpha King. She didn't know she carried the blood of the moon blessed. She didn't know that what her family threw away was priceless. But now you know. And you're standing at a choice point just like Stephanie was. You can walk away from this story right now. Close this video. Scroll to something easier, simpler, less demanding of your attention. That's the safe choice. That's the comfortable choice. Or you can subscribe. You can hit that notification bell. You can commit to seeing Stephanie's full transformation from discarded bride to Alpha Queen. You can be part of the community that says, I want to see women who were underestimated rise up and reclaim their power. This isn't just entertainment. This is about bearing witness to a woman becoming who she was always meant to be. And if you've made it this far, if you're still here, still listening, still caring about Stephanie, then you owe it to yourself, and to her, to subscribe. We're building something here. A community of people who believe that your worst day can become your greatest transformation. Who believe that the people who reject you don't get to define your worth. Who believe that sometimes, being broken open is the only way to discover you were never breakable in the first place. So here's my ask, subscribe right now. Not tomorrow. Not after you finish the video. Now. Because Stephanie didn't wait to become powerful. She said yes in that clearing, and everything changed. Say yes right now. Subscribe. Turn on notifications. Help us reach 1,000 subscribers so we can keep telling stories about women who refuse to stay victims. One click. For every person who was ever called too soft. For every bride who had her wedding stolen. For every daughter whose family valued her sister more. One click. For Stephanie. Do it now.